So with that, we turn over to Johan to introduce our next WEEF 2022 guest.
Are we cruising for a bruising when ethics and economy have to live together? About this we want to talk with Professor Dr. Stefan Heinemann. Please come to me to the stage for an interview. Professor Dr. Stefan Heinemann is Professor of Business Ethics at the FOM University of Applied Sciences in Munich and spokesperson of the Ethic Eclipse Smart Hospital at the University of Medicine Essen and focus on economic and ethic perspectives on digital medicine and the healthcare industry. And he has many other jobs in this direction. Professor Heinemann has supported the WEEF project almost from the start, and as an ethic expert, he's given us a lot of inputs for the project, and now we are happy to have you here in Munich. We both see first time live because all the other meetings were digitally.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Thank you.
Professor Heinemann, when did you first seriously come into contact with ethics, and when did you decide to become an ethics professor?
My personal contact with morality is hopefully very early in my life. With ethics, so thinking about what's there, what you can observe, how people act, how people argue, that came later with studying philosophy and theology, and with my personal business experience, of course, also, because I felt that, actually ethics is usually in business something where people say, oh, now it's getting complicated, here's the pressure, the ethics guys are coming, right? But I always felt that it's the opposite. Ethics is something that stimulates you, that opens horizons and all of those things. And yeah, for me personally, that was, don't get me wrong, I'm not the most moral person in the world, right? I'm not a moral genius, by far not. But I understand that it is important, and for my life, it's part of my professional life to find arguments to convince people who don't think like that.
That guides me to the next question. How important is ethical behavior by organizations and companies?
Well, that is like suggestive. What can you say? It's not important. Of course it is. But I think the difference now is that the whole world is at a tipping point. Not just when it comes down to the climate change, but when it comes down to the social structures of our planet also. And if it is right that companies have a license to operate granted by society, then the only valid business model for sustainable business model is to behave ethical in the very fundamental sense of the word. Do what's good for society, what's good for your business, what's good for nature, etc. And don't feel like, it's decades ago when we discussed, I'm 53 years old, right? And it's decades ago when we discussed that it's not all about the eternal growth of whatever it is. For sure not money. It's okay to do business and to make profits, but it's not okay to think that profits are an end in itself. They aren't. An end in itself is to do good for society, to do good for the planets. And if you make good profits with that, that's okay. But for sure, it's not eternal growth. That's not the model anymore, and it never was.
What is your advice to companies that want to develop their ethical behavior further?
Well, simply do it. Like Don said, do it and talk about it. I mean, to invest in ethics, it's not that complicated. You don't need like the big like consulting companies explaining for 100,000 or million of dollars to you what ethical behavior is and this and that. You don't need that. Sit together with your employees, with your shareholders, better with all your stakeholders, with your clients, and discuss what is really important. And you will find out there is something that you already do. Of course, you obey the law. You're not criminals, but that's not enough. You have to think and be smart and think about where is my opportunity in being ethical. Of course, from a philosophical standpoint, being ethical is a value in itself. It's not an instrument to achieve something. That's greenwashing or ethics washing or whatever you want to call it. But if you take it serious and really believe that it matters, it will work out. Why? Because the world is as it is, because in this world we can do what we ought to do. As a Christ, I call that creation, but call it whatever you want. But it's a mere fact of metaphysics. It may not render true for the next quarter or for the next 2 quarters, but it renders true for the rest of all of your life and for sure for your offspring.
Yeah. What benefit could organizations and companies gain from ethical behavior?
Well, if you want to talk about benefits, of course there is something. I would call it a windfall profit because it should not be intended, right? If you do ethics, you have attraction for the new audiences, for the younger demographics, because people tend, like Don said, more and more ask for mission, ask for values, etc. Of course, they ask for money. It's not that you say, okay, we have a good mission, we're very ethical people, we pay you 50% of the value of your compensation. It's a combination. A second argument is be faster than regulation, so you get competitive advantage. Why? Because regulation is coming after you. What we see in polycrisis is you have to decide where you want to stand in business. And if you stand with, you cannot probably for the next decades do global business without taking care and precise care of the values of the partners, of the countries, of the systems. It's much more viable and vital for business than it was back in the days. And therefore, you need a good idea how to go with the regulations, supply chain regulation, etc. It's getting more and more and stronger and stronger. And in 10 years from now, it's not enough to say, I'm a small company, so I got 10 employees. You're in it. You don't have to have like 3,000 employees with a SCAAD like we have in Germany right now, or Europe supply chain, right? It's enough to be small. Everybody's involved. The taxes will change, the tax systems will change, etc. So it's smart to be one step ahead the development. And you can anticipate that. Of course, we see in Europe right now, there might be crazy, immoral and irrational leaders. Of course. You cannot predict everything, but a lot. And that's a good thing. That's an advantage. And the third is cost. People think sustainability ethics is costs. No, it's an investment. It's the best investment you can have. Why? Because then you don't need to invest so much into compliance. Because compliance is costly. Because it's the enforcement of rules. But if you open up your company for ethical insights, and don't think it's just talking nice and people discussing values, you feel kind of good and that's it. No, it's at the very heart, and that is what we call purpose. And if you bring that across to your employees, you don't have employees anymore, you have ambassadors. If you bring that across to your clients, to your customers, you don't have customers anymore, you have partners. If you bring that across to your shareholders, you don't have shareholders anymore, you have stakeholders, right? And that's the future. And that is so much you can get from that. And also in real return and cash money if you're interested.
What I've learned from my readers, maybe it's the same with Elektor and also on conference, whenever it comes to ethical questions, the interest of the people is very high. What responsibility do you see among the employees of the companies, and what is their role in this development?
you cannot delegate ethics. It's not possible to say, okay, you do it for me, or I pay you for doing it for me. It's not possible. You have to do it yourself, right? If I want to lose weight, I cannot say to the gentleman, please lose weight for me. It's not possible. Would be nice if you do so, but it's not possible. It's the same with ethics. It's your fundamental duty to do so. And that's also renders true for every single person who is part of the company, who is part of the family, doing, like here all around us, doing great products, doing great services. That renders true for everybody.
Coming back to compliance, how do you see the upcoming German Supply Chain Act? I get a lot of feedback from the industry. This would be a lot of work for me and a lot of things we don't need, we don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, from an ethical standpoint, of course, that is right. The SCDDA, right? The abbreviation is right. Why? Because self-commitment did not work. So what can you do? Regulation is stepping in. So be smart, do some self-commitment. It's way better. And now it's for companies above 3,000 employees. Well, it will drop 1,000 employees in 2024, and it will drop further. Now we have maybe, when it's really starting off, 900,000 companies in Germany who really got to deal with that. Then we had maybe 5,000. That seems not to be a lot, but it will be probably, like everyone in your industry, you have to deal with that in the not too distant futures. You don't have like 5 or 10 years like in the pocket. It's really time to do it now. From an ethical standpoint, it's okay. What I don't like, also from an ethical standpoint, is bureaucracy. Companies' job is to do good business and not to deal 30% of their time with regulations and this and that. So we need good and smart regulations that really has an outcome and not just regulation for sake of making my voters happy, right? We need clever regulation. But everybody of you can participate. We have stakeholder campaigns on and off in the EU. Everybody can participate in that. And the bigger companies, of course, trying to do that, to get a regulation that is really feasible, that works, and that has a business advantage and is not a disadvantage for you in business.
Professor Heinemann, how does the European Union support ethics and sustainability in industry, trade and business? Do you see any activities who are really good for our industry?
I mean, the EU is not a state like the US. It is quite complicated. If you really dig deep into the history of Europe, you understand why it's so complicated. Into the history of the European Union. The governance, the regulation is extremely complicated. And so what are they doing? They have guidelines, they have frameworks, sometimes they have legal initiatives, all that for your industry, for data, of course, for the data industry, for AI, etc. You name it, it's all there. But it's highly complicated. And I think the central idea of the EU that values can be a competitive advantage, it's up to you to prove that. The EU cannot do it. It's the companies who got to prove that. And everybody working in the company. And it's the shareholders' task to do that. Don't invest your monies in company who offer you 100% in a month. That's not working. Not talking about ESG criteria, etc. There will be more and more regulation. But I think the EU is a good concept. But we have to have more grassroots. We have to have more coming from the companies, coming from the markets. Because otherwise, the alternate concept for markets is communism. I don't believe in communism. If people are like brought to the finishing line, everybody to the finishing line at the same time, I don't believe in that. But I believe in justice. I believe in people having the same opportunities, having the same opportunities to have a good life altogether in Europe. I believe in that. And without companies, without businesses, without good business cases, I think it is simply not possible to do that. That's simply not realistic. That's Star Trek future, right? You don't have business, just the Ferengis doing business. The rest is just doing sciences and stuff like that. We need good business.
Before I come to my next question, is there any question from the internet or here from the audience to Professor Heinemann?
Questions or critique, of course, everything is warmly welcome.
Statements?
Please.
So besides regulation, there exist some standards that you can voluntarily sign up for, such as ISO 26000. Does that not go far enough? Do there need to be more guidelines or a guidebook of some sort?
That's an interesting, very good question. Thank you very much for that. I mean, I think we have enough like guidelines. What we need is more stuff that we can use in practice, right? That on a corporate kind of level. What can I do running a corporation or being responsible for production or for sustainability in my company? What can I do? What can I do? It needs to be more the transfer from all those like guidelines and norms, etc., into practice. That's the fundamental thing. Because if you talk to practitioners in business, it's not that they are against ethics. Nobody is against ethics. But they are against complexity. Yeah? They don't like that. Why? It's costly and complexity is no purpose either. Yeah? The purpose of business is to do good business and not just like handle complexity with like 1,000 guidelines. Simple, clear, and measurable. That's the thing. And in research, for 30 years, we have researched how to do that. But to put it into practice, that's the thing. We have all the KPIs, we have the key performance indicator, we have the key risk indicators looking into the future. We have all that. Yeah, we have sustainability controlling. It's all available. Yeah.
Here's another question from the internet.
From the internet, from Benjamin. I hope that. So it's a moral question. Will you be watching the World Cup in Qatar?
Thank you, Benjamin. That's the thing with ethics, right? It comes right to you as a person. Now I'm talking to you, Benjamin, not as Professor Heinemann, the science guy. I'm talking to you as Stefan. Nice to meet you. I don't watch it because I don't support this. Because there can just be one way to deal with people, and I have high respect for Muslims, for the Islam, for most of the religions, of course. But I don't respect people using religion for wrong goals. And when I heard this silly, I don't know, the football, soccer kind of guy talking about women, I was close to puke. That's my answer.
Very clear statement. Professor Heinemann, last question. Have you any further messages or advices for our industry and for the people in our industry before we end this interview?
Maybe a message, not an advice, that would be too much, but success in Germany, we say Erfolg hat 3 Buchstaben, T-U-N. Goethe said that, like every smart stuff around. Yeah? Literally translated would be, I mean, not 3, but 4 letters. Success has 4 letters. Do it. And that's the point with ethics. Go into your company, talk to people who are interested, do it. Don't think too much about costs. It doesn't have to be that costly. Do it, talk about it, and put yourself into the commitment. Because when you talk about it, it's difficult to say, yeah, baby, yeah, you know? You're in the commitment. So it's Don's recommendation, and I totally agree with that. Talk about that. Don't be afraid. Everyone makes mistakes. We are all sinners, and that's also okay. But step by step, we can move forward.
Professor Dr. Stefan Heinemann, thank you very much for this impulses, for your motivation. You are motivating us really and it's great to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much.